In this new world that we live in, digital perception influences physical reality. What does that mean? It means how people perceive you online is how they're going to treat you offline. So I knew that if I could just position my profile and optimize my profile, which anyone can go and do, in a way that people would perceive me to be a professional, I could actually have a chance to get a conversation with them.
What is up, Growth House family? It is your host, as always, Jesse Ray. I am here with my friend, Mr. Luke Hessler. Luke, I'm excited for this podcast. And before we get started, I just want to give people a bio kind of about you and, why people should actually listen to you, because you have an amazing background. You're a devoted husband, a loving father, dynamic digital entrepreneur who believes you can get anything you want in this world by helping enough other people get what they want. And I'm sure it's probably a shout out to Zig Ziglar, because I think that's a quote of his that I absolutely live by as well. Dropped out of college at 19, launched your first business with a $600 loan, quickly mastered digital PR, earning six figures by 20 years old, generating over $10 million annually by 23. In 2017, after your own success, you founded your first personal branding agency to help others do what you did for yourself. You've been featured in Forbes, Yahoo Finance, the list goes on. And you've spoken globally, sharing stages with real legends like Gary Vee, Robert Kiyosaki, and now at the ripe age of 31, we're the same age, CEO of Ace Branding. You've worked with over 1,500 clients, including Dr. Seuss, Calvin Johnson, Andrew Tate. I mean, these are huge names. And you've helped them build their brand, inspiring others to thrive in this digital age. Now, Luke, before we even get started and dive into today's show, I always like to share the backstory about how I meet the amazing guests that we have. Our Growth House motto is you become who you surround yourself with. Growth House is all about the power of relationships and really just being intentional about your growth in life and business. So with that being said, shout out to our guy, Mr. Cody Barton. He's awesome, the ultimate integrator. And a lot of my actual entrepreneur friends now are coaching clients of him and scaling from 7 to 8 figures. But we got connected because actually now probably 3-4 weeks ago at his bachelor party. Even before that, I was sitting down with him. And I don't know if you know this, but sitting down with Cody, we're kind of outlining some stuff, talking about, ways that we can help each other. I'm like, dude, you have a great inner circle. Who are 1 to 2 guys that you really would recommend I connect with, have on the podcast? And he goes, Luke, you guys will hit it off. And now here we are after we played paintball together and now on the pod. So I know you two go way back. How about we start there? What was that first step in that entrepreneurial journey? Because I think Cody was kind of a part of it.
Yeah, he definitely was. So both Cody and I got our start in a network marketing company called Vima way back in the day. And so my journey with Vima was I was a broke college student, and I was kind of trying to reinvent myself, so to speak. So a little bit of context, I come from a great family, raised with incredible parents. My dad's a doctor. I got good grades in high school. I didn't party in high school, anything like this. I was really focused on sports. Then I went to college, and how you do anything is how you do everything. And so I joined a fraternity and went all in. I like to say that God kept me on a short leash, because within the matter of my freshman year, I got 3 minor impossessions of alcohol. And so I was pretty close to getting a felony for drinking underage. And coming from a super Christian conservative household, I might as well have murdered somebody. So my turning point in my life was when I remember I was in the drunk tank for the 3rd time. And I had promised my mom, I'm not going to drink. I'm going to get my life straight. And then literally 2 weeks later, I'm freaking back in this drunk tank, and it's a $250 bail, which I don't have the money to freaking pay. And so I got to call her again at 3 a.m. I just remember this defining moment. A lot of people I meet have this defining moment. I think it was Tony Robbins who says, when the pain of staying the same outweighs the pain of change, then you change, right? And I remember looking in this mirror, just so scared to pick up this phone to call my mom. But I'm looking in the mirror in this drunk tank, and I got one person next to me who puked on himself, another person next to me who peed all over himself. And I'm looking at myself, I'm overweight because I'm drinking too much. And I didn't recognize the person that was looking back at me in the mirror. And I was just like, dude, this isn't you. And in that moment, I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to get my life together and I'm going to figure this thing out. And, made a phone call, guy out, 4 months later, I ended up meeting a guy who was 25 years old, who was making 40 grand a month in this network marketing company. And I saw it as a chance to reinvent myself. And so begged my parents for a $600 loan to get started. They were like, first you're going in jail, now you're joining a pyramid scheme. Like, you are such a loser. And so I'm
Your
like, no,
dad's a
trust me,
doctor.
it's
Like,
gonna freaking
where
work.
did I go wrong?
Exactly, exactly. That's literally what my mom's thinking. I'm like, trust me, it's gonna work. I'm pretty persistent when I want something, and so they ended up giving me the money, $600 to get started as a loan to teach me a lesson that these quote unquote things don't work. I was ambitious. I worked really hard, and I was able to go out there and make it work. And so me and Cody were both some of like the youngest six-figure earners in that company. We weren't on the same team, but we had both kind of risen to the top of it, and so we naturally networked and connected with each other there. So yeah.
I love that. And I feel like network marketing obviously kind of has a bad, rap to it. But at the end of the day, like people in our age, people born in like the 90s, I feel like that was our gateway drug. That's how we, got started on personal development. That's how we got started on rejection, because people all the time, because I was in Amway for a brief minute.
There
And
you
so I
go.
totally get it. Like I get the whole, what comes with being in network marketing, but it sounds like you were actually extremely successful with it. So I guess just a couple questions for you. Would you recommend someone get into network marketing if they are in college and they're trying to, find their way into entrepreneurship?
Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely recommend it to anybody. I think it's an amazing, you said it was like a gateway drug. I think it's a good way of putting it. For me, it was my entrepreneurial education. It's what introduced me to personal development. It's where I learned how to market. It's where I learned how to sell. I learned leadership. I learned public speaking. I learned all of those things. And it's an incredible way to get access to people who have a vested interest in your success. Because if you just join the entrepreneurial world and you're just a traditional entrepreneur, it's very difficult to get mentorship from people that are, 10, 12 chapters ahead of you in life. Because frankly, it's like you're not worth their time, no disrespect, but like you're probably competition to them, right? If you're in their same industry. So why are they going to give you the secrets of success? But in network marketing, it's very different. When you join a network marketing company, the people at the quote unquote top, the most successful individuals, they have a vested interest in your success. So the more success they help you get, the more success they get. And so you can be confident that the information and the mentorship that you're receiving is actually genuine and pure because, again, selfishly, the more they help you win, the more they win. And so that they want to go and help you win. And I don't think there's any other environment where you can get around that type of mentorship, get access to that type of mentorship. And it frankly changed my life. So even if you don't make any money, I don't know how you did in Amway. It sounds like it wasn't a huge thing for you, but still, I have so many people on my team. I had almost 30,000 people in that organization. I have so many people who made nothing in that, but they took the principles that they learned, the mindset, the skills, and they applied it to various other industries, and they are crushing it right now. And they'll tell you that it was because of the education that they learned. And so I think it's a fantastic stepping stone for people.
I 100% agree. I would look at either a network marketing company, especially if you're in college or even high school, or doing some kind of door to door. Like the
Yeah,
door to door sales thing is kind of blowing up right now, and I think that's another way to really you know, get that tough bone in your body where you're not scared of rejection. Because I think that's something if you learn early, you get that over with. The rest of your life is so much better when you don't have to worry all the time about, oh my gosh, what do people think of me? Like, go fail because you're going to fail a lot, especially if you want to be an entrepreneur. So go fail early, fail often. So I think those are the two ways that I recommend people get into the game of the world of entrepreneurship. As far as, if I would do it again, 1000%, because that was where I really learned how to dream big. That was where
mm,
I learned, like you talked about, the power of mentorship. I had a coach at the time, I had a stock coach that I was learning from. Awesome. They helped me out a ton. I'm a huge proponent of coaching, of mentorship, of communities. But that also, you talked about vested interests, definitely made it where it wasn't like anything I've ever been a part of before. And even to this day, now I'm like, okay, how do I have people have invested interest in Growth House or anything that I do? Now it's like a board of directors. Now I have to give them equity. You don't have to
right.
do that if you're in network marketing. Now it's just a vested interest of them trying to help you because they get a percentage. So,
That's right.
I love that you just talk about that because I think a lot of people won't, but totally agree with you there. So the transition from network marketing into branding, what happens next?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So this is the first time like I really hit a roadblock in entrepreneurship. Granted, like I didn't find just immediate success in network marketing. Like I failed flat on my face for 6 months. Like it was quite an experience. And then I did find some success pretty quickly from there. But then, I'm 23 years old. I have this huge organization. I'm traveling all across the world, speaking on stages with all of these really impressive people, making tens of thousands of dollars a month. And I'm like I got life figured out. And then wake up one day and come to find out the company that we were a part of shut down. And so immediately, my income goes from 30, 40 a month down to zero. And that's fine. But I had a little bit of money, saved up. But the hardest thing for me in that time actually was the team and the organization that I had, because, they all joined this because of me and because of my vision and what I had, sold to them eventually, essentially. And I believed it wholeheartedly, I really did. But it was a lot, it was really heavy, for me. And I kind of felt a lot of that guilt essentially. And so after that, I tried to bounce around to a couple other companies. But at that point, I think a lot of the naivety that I had in the beginning was gone, in the sense I knew too much. And there's something about when you first get started in network marketing, the naivety is actually really powerful. And then you start to learn too much and these backdoor deals and like all this kind of stuff that goes on. And I'm just like, I don't know. And so at that point, I was like, all right, now I need to do my own thing after trying a couple of companies that didn't really work out for me. And so when I was thinking about like, what's the thing I want to go out there and do? I want to bet on me. I was like, okay, well, we built most of our organization from, this whole social media thing and helping people build a brand online and leveraging that and all of that kind of stuff. And I had a bunch of people that were asking me how to go out there and do that within the industry. So I built a reputation as someone who knew how to go out there and do that. And so I said, hey, people are already asking me how to go out there and do this. Like, I can just start a company to teaching people how to go and do this. And so four of my buddies and I, we decided to start this branding agency. It was called Invigorate at the time, teaching people how to, grow their brand. Primarily, we were focused on Instagram at that point. It was back when like they had like the old like follow and follow days. I don't know if you remember that. There's like softwares you could grow accounts that way, right? And so we had one of those softwares, and we grew that to pretty quickly to like 600 active clients. And first thing I'm learning is like, okay, low ticket, charging 150, 250 bucks, 600 clients is a pain in the butt when it comes to customer service. All right, so lesson learned within that, and also betting on something that's a short-term hit. It was like I kind of always knew that the follow and follow thing wasn't going to work forever, but we were like, all right, we're going to use this as a primary product offering, and then we'll switch to some other things as we do that. And that ended up kind of biting us in the butt a little bit as we went and did that as well. So another lesson I learned in this is also don't always work with your friends. A lot of the people that we started with at that time, they were just friends, and like we just got everyone started in the business. Not everyone had equal, not quite equal, but pretty close to equal equity, but not everyone brought equal value. And then ended up the CFO that we had, who was a friend of ours, ended up embezzling tens of thousands of dollars from the company. We had no idea. And it was like, we didn't figure it out until we wake up one day. This follow and follow software no longer works because of this update that happened within Instagram. And so we're like, all right, how much runway do we have? We should have plenty of cash in the bank. We go to look at the bank and there's like nothing in the freaking bank. And we're like, where's all of our money? And I learned literally 3 days before my wedding, now we have no business and there's no money in this freaking bank, and we got to figure something else out. And so that was a whole nother situation that I ended up kind of navigating through. And I've been through multiple iterations of that. I've been in the game for now like 12 years, and so when you do that, you learn a lot. And what I've learned is that I always tell people this. I'm like, listen, they want to see the cars, they want to see the house, they want to see like the nice stuff, and it's cool. But the reality is that you can learn a lot more from mine and anyone's scars than you can from their accolades. And so I think that's an important point for people to realize.
So what's something you took away from that relationship, partnership that went sour? What was something that you maybe missed early on?
Yeah, well, number one is freaking look at your bank account. All right. That's the first basic thing. All right. Sounds pretty simple, right? But like, I didn't do that. Like, literally, what would happen is every single week we would get a report from him. He would say, hey, here's all the KPIs. Here's all the numbers. And like, and that was that, and we just thought that it was true. I wasn't even freaking looking at the bank account, just looking at a report from the person who was in charge of the bank account. So look at your freaking bank account, number one. Number two is I actually think that if you're starting out a business, I don't think that you should have partners in the beginning. Personally, I think that you should do it on your own as much as humanly possible. The biggest reason for that is that most people, they don't actually pick strategic partners, and because they don't understand it yet. They don't know what a strategic partner really is. They just kind of start with the person. It's like you came up with an idea and your buddy was there as well. And because you're both all there together, now let's start this business together. And that usually ends up not working out very well. And so I encourage people to, if you're starting a business, do it on your own, do your best to protect that equity with your life, and only give out equity, in my opinion, when it is 100% needed, where it's like, if you're working with someone where they bring a completely complementary skill set that you have nothing of, and they are an absolute expert in, and they have experience and they've been there and they've done that and they have a track record, then fine. You can go out there and start to consider that. But, in the beginning, I just wanted to do business with my friends. friends, and it's not the right way to go out there and do it. I would say that's number two. And I would say the third thing really is, you got to remember that whenever you switch industries, you're starting over. So because I was really successful in network marketing, I thought I had entrepreneurship figured out. I'm like, I'm a freaking rock star entrepreneur. I can do anything, right? And so it was like, I'll get into this agency game. I'll crush this. Life's easy. I've already got all this figured out. I've put in the work, right? But what happened is that when I switched industries from network marketing to digital marketing, I started over. I had 5 years or 3 or whatever it was, 4 years of experience in this one particular industry. And it did give me some skills that carried over here. But there's some intricacies in every single industry that, are called, I look at them as like black swans, right? They're just, you don't know what you don't know. Right. And you've got to acknowledge that you don't know what you don't know, because most people don't know that they don't know, if you're following me with that. Right. And so it's this level of ignorance that's there. And so if you're ever going to be like jumping from thing to thing, realize all the experience that you built up in this other vehicle is now going away. And now you are literally starting over by doing this thing. And I see so many people, and I did this in my career as well, hopping from the next hot thing to the next hot thing. It's like, building an agency is hot. And now, e-com stores are hot. And now, like this is hot. And they just go from thing to thing to thing. And they never are in one place long enough to really be able to succeed. And what I found is, if I would have just take network marketing, for example, if I just would have stayed in that the whole time and never moved from that, no doubt I would have found success way faster, because I had a foundation of 5 years already built up in that thing. And so that's a huge lesson that I've learned as well, is that you got to focus, and you got to stay in the vehicle that you're in, and stay where you have a competitive advantage at, in my opinion.
So good. Let's talk about shiny object syndrome, because that's basically what you're mentioning.
Yeah.
What would you say for that entrepreneur who does have shiny object syndrome, which let's say about 99% of us do? How long should you stay before you're like, you know what, this actually truly isn't working, or maybe I just need to pivot a little bit? Talk to us about that.
Yeah, it's a good question. So if something isn't working, it doesn't mean that it doesn't work. It means you haven't figured out how to make it work. So there's a big difference between the two, where if you look at any industry, and if there's somebody else that's winning in that industry, it works, right? Like real estate works, digital marketing works, e-com works, network marketing works. There's a bajillion examples of those things. And so if it's not working for you, you have to take personal responsibility and look yourself in the mirror and suck the hard pill down that says, I'm not good enough yet. Because that is the truth. The reason it's not working for you and it's working for other people is because they are better than you. Okay. And that's a hard thing to accept. It's a hard thing for me to accept, when I was in this game. And that's a huge thing. I think a lot of people blame their circumstances. And I don't think that's the way that you succeed. I think you have to take personal responsibility for your life. With that being said, in order to succeed in any industry is going to take an immense amount of sacrifice, effort, energy, time. And that's just a reality, no matter what it is that you're in. And so if you hate what you do every single day, it is very difficult to invest that amount of time. Okay. And so if you hate what you do, that's when I may consider switching. First, I would ask yourself, why am I hating it? Is it because you're looking at this the wrong way, right? Is it because you're living in the wrong paradigm and you should be looking at it from a different perspective, right? But if it's not, and you're actually accurately evaluating this situation, but you hate what you do every single day, that is when I would consider switching, because the likelihood that you're actually going to put in the time and actually be able to stick it out to make it win will be so low, versus if you go to something that you do enjoy, and you don't love every part of it, right? But like, take my industry, for example. I love who I work with. I love my clients. I think it's an amazing thing. There's a bunch of crap that I don't love about it, right? But I love who I get to work with so much that it pushes me through, the mundane, boring, laborious stuff to go and do it. And if you don't have that carrot at the end that's pushing you through it, where you can start to love what you do, it's very difficult to pursue it. And so again, if you're in a point where you're considering switching, you have to ask yourself why, right? If you're blaming the industry instead of blaming yourself, that's your problem right there, number one. Number two, if you are blaming yourself, maybe you're looking at this the wrong way, and maybe you have to change your perspective on it, number two. But number three is, if you've looked at both of those categories and you're just like, dude, I just hate this. I just hate the work that I'm doing. then that's when I would consider, probably moving to something else that you could invest more time and energy into.
So good. And here's the reality, guys. If you're just starting off, you probably gonna hate it until you start winning. And
Mm.
once you start winning and making some money, guess what? All of a sudden it gets fun. So I would really think about like, do I actually hate this for like you were talking about? Why do I hate this? If I was
Yep.
making 50, 60 grand a month, would you still hate this? Think about that. So I think it's a great, I love what you just said there. What's your thoughts on people, especially nowadays, which I think is awesome. But everyone's like, I want to chase my passion. I really want to have a career or start a business I'm super passionate about. I'll tell you my quick story. I was not passionate about becoming a sales rep selling copiers, but guess what? I was winning. That made me money. That money I put into real estate. Do I love real estate? Sure. I kind of do actually love real estate. I love the, way I'm able to provide for people, do furnished living, have entrepreneur houses. But at the end of the day, I didn't make my money through my passion. I made it through big commission checks that I was able to then fund my passion. So I kind of have a different way to think about it where I'm like, hey, go make your money however you can, especially early on, and then you can kind of chase your passion. But what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, personally, I got really lucky because the first business that I got into, I was actually extremely passionate about. Like, I was absolutely sold out believer that Vima was the best thing on the planet. I will die on this freaking hill, okay? And that was a reason that I was able to freaking work so hard. Like, I sacrificed everything for it. My girlfriend broke up with me for it. I started failing out of school from it. All my fraternity members thought I was a freaking loser for it after like being a cool like person in it. Like it was just I sacrificed it, and it was because I was actually passionate about that thing. And so if you are lucky enough to find a business that can make you money and you're passionate about it, you just consider yourself blessed and freaking run. Okay. Just run. With that being said, what I have now learned is that I am the exception and not the norm. The vast majority of people do not start off with something that they're very passionate about. And the reason for that is they don't know what they're passionate about. Like I like to think of it, it's like imagine if you go to a new country, and I'll give an example of this. I went to China when I was in seventh grade, and I had family that lived over there. So we spent like a week out in China or a week and a half. I am like naturally a relatively picky eater. And so like we went to a buffet and there's all of these different foods that are there. And I didn't know any of the foods other than the white rice. That was it. That was the only food that I knew that I liked. And so no joke, for an entire week, I ate white rice for an entire week. That was it because it's the only food that I knew. So that's how I lived that life. And that's how most people go through their career where they think they know what they want. And so they just do this one thing or they focus on that or whatever. But like if I were to go back to that experience, what the best way for me to have dealt with that would be, all right, I'm at a buffet. I don't know anything. I do know that I like the white rice, but maybe I like some of this other food as well. And so I should have tried all these other foods at this buffet to see what I like most. And it's maybe after trying a bunch of these foods, I'd be like, yeah, it's the white rice for me. And I would have gone back to that. But I don't know. I don't know. And you don't know unless you try. And so what I really encourage people that are young is like, get in the game, and like go out there and try a bunch of stuff because that's the advantage that you have of being young is that like you can fail and get back up. Like I have a kids, I got a family now. Like failing is much harder because the stakes are higher. Like when I was young and if someone on here is young and listening to this, like the stakes aren't as high for you. You can fall down, get back up, and it's all good, because the point right now in the beginning of your journey, yes, you want to make some money and that's great. But what you really want to do is you want to get better. You want to learn. You want to improve your skills, improve your mindset, because the reality is as you become more, you will make more. And so if you can focus on your personal growth and development, and that's a key thing that you drive through, then it makes everything else much easier regardless of the path that you end up going and choosing. And so it's a long-winded answer to your question, but my point is it's like if you can find the passion, amazing. But I don't think that's the thing. It's like, because here's the thing is if you are not prepared, even if you find your passion, you will not succeed because you don't have the skills, you don't have the stuff, So focus on your own personal growth and development first, and then go out there and find that passion.
You mentioned losing friends, and I'm sure those friends were the friends you probably should have lost and you probably don't want around. But how important is association and environment and just, that circle around you of those people, that friendship?
Yeah, I mean, it's literally everything. I mean, I really believe in what Jim Rohn says that you become the average of the five people that you spend the most time with. I don't necessarily think that that has to be just who you're physically around. I think now with the internet, you can be around friends and mentors online. You listen to podcasts, you listen to, various things on YouTube and stuff like that. And you can get access to people that was never possible to get access to in the past. And you can make that be your circle essentially. And that's important. But oftentimes you are going to be the average of the five people you hang around the most because for me, my friends at the time, and again, they're nice people, they're good people. I don't judge them at all, but we weren't all that much friends. We were more like drinking and partying buddies. That's really what we were. And it was like when I'm around them, they're trying to, shame me for not getting blackout drunk with them. And I don't blame them because I was on the other side of that too, at some point. And so it's like that's how they know me and that's how I knew them. And that was our association. But I grew out of that. I didn't want that life anymore. And so I had to go out there and move and evolve and get to that next level. I mean, there's a really cool story of it's like out in I forget the name of the tree. I think it's the redwood, right? The redwood tree out in California that's freaking giant, right? Like you can literally drive a car through the base of these trees because they're so wide. Okay. That's how like huge these trees are, hundreds of feet tall. But then if you go into the gift shop of that exact same place, you can find these little mini redwoods that are like 3 feet tall. And the question is like, well, why is it that some of these redwoods are freaking 300 feet tall and this one is 3 feet tall? And the answer is because of the environment that they're in. That mini redwood has a little pot that limits the size of the roots. And so because the roots can't get any bigger than what that pot allows it, the roots determine the size of the tree. And so it's the environment that determines the size of the roots. So, bringing it back to people, your environment will determine your roots, your personal development, your growth, and you're going to be limited by that environment. So do anything that you can to be able to surround yourself with people who are limitless, who see more in you than you see in yourself. And that is going to give you a massive competitive advantage in the marketplace.
All right, Den, who's my editor, clip that one up because that was fire. Luke, I can talk to you for hours, man. I love this. Let's continue this story. So you're doing this. You obviously got when your partner started embezzling money, everything's going to, hell. You're about to get married at this time too. A lot's going on in your life. Then transitions into what?
So then transitions into my second agency. I'm on my third one right now. So this turns into my second one. So the second
And
one
listen,
was
guys, he's on his second agency. This is not a everything turns to gold. This is, hey, I'm trying things, I'm failing, I'm learning, I'm bouncing back. Okay, I'm sorry, I just had to say that because I think it's really good to know.
No, I think it's really important to know. Again, you can learn more from my scars and my accolades. Really, really important to note. So I appreciate you emphasizing that. So I'm on my second agency, and again, I'm just like at this time, what I had in that agency was probably the most valuable resource, which was reputation and relationships. And so even though that the software that we had did not work anymore, I still had reputation, like of being a good person, doing good business, someone who knew what I was doing, and I had relationships with a lot of my higher level clients that were there. And so these people still wanted to work with me on other things. And so that's when I started my own agency, and it was just me in that. At that time, it was actually right before I started to figure this out right before the software shut down because we were thinking about this being an add-on for our company. So we had like 600 clients that wanted Instagram growth, right? And so this is back in like 2017. And so at this time in 2017, getting like a blue check mark was like you were God essentially. It was so hard to get, and it just made everybody like see like, holy crap, they're verified, right? And so all of these clients wanted to be able to go and get verified. And I'm like, man, if I can figure out how to get these guys this check, like this is going to be absolutely killer. And so I already had relationships with people at Instagram, and I learned that the way to be able to go and get someone verified is by going and helping them get like 10 to 15 full feature articles in quote unquote credible publications. And so I'm like, all right, well, let me go and make a strategic partnership, right? It's like if I can go find a PR firm, they can help my people get published, then I can go and help them get submitted for verification, and like we can create this package to go and help them do it. And it was like a high ticket thing. I mean, people were paying like 15, 20, 30 grand to go and get this check mark. And I'm like, all right, this is a big opportunity that's here. So reach out to all these PR firms and things. And almost every single one of them that I talked to, they wanted like some sort of a retainer of like 5 or 10 grand a month. And then they would pitch my client stories to all of these publications, and maybe they'd get picked up, maybe they wouldn't. But even if they did get picked up, the journalist was going to write whatever the journalist wanted to write. So we had no control over the narrative. So like there was no way that I could guarantee to get these 10 to 15 articles in these credible publications by going that route. And so that's when I was like, all right, how can I solve this? And I started just thinking, I'm like, well, there are journalists, there are contributors at these various publications, and their job is just to publish stories. That's it. So they have a quota of a certain number of stories that they have to publish every single month. And I'm like, well, okay, well, I have really interesting people that have really good stories to go and tell. So what if I just go and build relationships with some of these contributors at some of these various publications, and I help bring them stories? And I go to these people and I would say, hey, you're looking for stories. Give me an idea of the type of story that you're looking to go and publish. Who's kind of like your ideal person? And I can play matchmaker, and I can bring you the people that you're looking to go and get published. By the way, if you go and do this for me, I'll also pay you for getting my client published as well. So now from the journalist's perspective, they did less work and made more money. And from my perspective, I could now offer guaranteed publishing for the clients. And from the client's perspective, I could actually put together a package that would guarantee them to get verified within a certain amount of time. It was like 90 days that we would go out there and do, and or their money was back, because I knew I could get the articles done, I could do the submission, I could go and do this kind of thing, right? So that's what we started doing. And I built this, kind of like this model around it, and we started, getting people verified. And so that was like the next like hustle really that I went out there and did. And, we did that for a decent amount of people and did it for a while. And, we crushed that. But again, this was another thing that I just realized that like, it didn't feel like a sustainable model. It was one of these things where like it was hot, but I don't think I'm gonna be able to do this forever, this type of thing. And obviously now you can pay $15 for, verification check marks. So that proved to be correct. But, at the time it was really hot. The interesting thing about it is that once we started getting people published in all of these articles, we started to get a really good feedback on the articles themselves. People are like, how can you guarantee to get publishing? I have another PR firm that I pay $6,000 a month, and they're giving me one article, and I don't even like it. And yours are, and so I was like, whoa, maybe there's an opportunity in this PR game where I can help people get published and kind of have a different model. Because what I realized is in traditional PR, which is in $100 billion industry, by the way, it's freaking massive. What happens is all of the risk gets put on the clients. So it's like you pay a retainer, and if that story doesn't get picked up, you're still paying the retainer. So the firm is still getting paid whether they deliver or they don't. And so that's how that goes. And I'm like, dude, if I can reverse risk in a way where I take the risk, but I know through my relationships, I can be confident enough to actually get these things published, I can come in and have a really unique offering and kind of disrupt this space a little bit. And so that's when I kind of started to transition from doing that to where I founded ACE in 2022, I think at the beginning of it. And that's when we really evolved into like a full-scale digital PR firm. So that was my third agency, moved from the verifications into ACE, and now we're a full-scale PR firm. And this is something that is sustainable. This is something that we will be able to do for a long time, and that we'll be able to go out there and scale with. So
Before we dive into ACE, which I really want to do, there's a recurring theme. Relationships have played a huge role in your life, and you understand the power of relationships, which we can talk about a little bit later. But then also, you see trends, you see problems in the market. True entrepreneur, you see, okay, this is what people want. How do people solve it? Okay, there's a better way that I can do this. And then you solve those problems, especially people starting off. If you see trends in the market, it's okay to ride those trends, but then also in the back of your head, realize, hey, this might not last forever. But what were you able to do while you're doing that? You built an amazing network, amazing relationships, had a great reputation. So I just wanted to kind of call out those things before we keep diving in. And then also, you mentioned reaching out to the contributors or the writers of these magazines, these online publishing, online digital newspapers, I guess you would call them, or websites, articles. How were you able to do that? What was your kind of route to pitch them on, hey, I'm someone that you should have this strategic partnership with?
Yeah, so this has really evolved over the years. Now the way that we do it is not as much just directly working with the contributors themselves, but actually the publications. And it's a little bit more of a scalable way of going and doing this. But back in the day, it was just LinkedIn. It was just, anyone can go and do this. you freaking search LinkedIn, like entrepreneur contributor, do a Boolean search, enter. And then boom, here comes all these contributors and entrepreneur that are looking for stories. I always tell people you're looking for people who are looking for you. And those people are looking for interesting stories to go out there and tell. So if you're someone even that's listening to this call and you just want to go and get your story published, like go out there, you can reach out to some of these people and you can go in and pitch yourself to them and for these stories. And granted, I will tell you, you got to understand the numbers game. It's most of them are probably going to ignore you, probably not going to say yes, right? But it's like it's law of averages. You go out there and reach out to 100 people, one of them's going to go and say yes, and you can go and get published. Granted, and I talked to Jesse or you a little bit about this before the call. I think if you're just starting out as an entrepreneur, frankly, I think your time should be better invested into like direct money making opportunities versus just trying to build your brand. Because I do think early on, a lot of the ego gets people to want to get featured in these articles and do this, and they're more worried about looking good than being good, and that's a problem. And so that's why I think that in the very beginning, if you're doing under $1 million a year, I don't think PR is actually for you. You should invest your time in other places. But if you're doing more than that, that's when I think it's going to be the right fit. But that's how we went out there and did it.
I love it. So let's talk about levels of PR before we go into ACE. So levels of PR, walk me through that. And let's start there.
So when we say like digital PR, like what even is that, right? What is this concept of digital PR? And really what we define it as is the conscious and intentional effort of positioning yourself as an expert in your industry. That's the concept of this. It's a very simple, basic concept, but that's what you want to go out there and do. And so when we say levels of PR, what I mean by that is it's like when I first started in my network marketing journey, the challenge with me trying to recruit people was that I was just this average college student who was absolutely dead broke, had 3 MIPs and had no credibility at all. Yet I'm trying to sell people on a dream to make $1 million, right? So like that's a problem. And so I needed to somehow figure out how to get some credibility around me. And what I realized is that in this new world that we live in, digital perception influences physical reality. Okay. And I'll say that again. It's worth writing down. Digital perception influences physical reality. What does that mean? It means how people perceive you online is how they're going to treat you offline. And so I learned this as a 19-year-old kid. And I started originally just by making my Facebook look better. Like if you look at what my Facebook looked like in 2011, 2012, it was a bunch of pictures of me partying with my friends, right? That's all it was. And so, then once I started to like learn this game, what I started to do is I started to intentionally position my brand online. I started to use professional photos. I deleted a bunch of the crap of me partying and drinking. I started to put out content around like personal development and things that I was learning and documenting my journey of like trying to figure this different stuff out, right? And the reason I primarily did this is that I knew that I was talking to people who didn't know me as a person. They never heard the name Luke Hessler before. And so when you hear something that you haven't heard about, what do most of the time? You freaking look it up online. You either Google them or you go to social media and then you judge them based off of what you see. So I knew that if I could just position my profile and optimize my profile, which anyone can go and do in a way that people would perceive me to be a professional versus just some average college student, I could actually have a chance to get a conversation with them because I knew if I could talk to them, like I would practice enough that like I was good at that. I could convince them, but I just couldn't get myself in the room. And so that's the first level of digital PR is just understanding the game and then just starting to do some of these free things to go and improve it. And it starts really with social media and getting that looking good. Again, it's as simple as optimizing your profile, putting out decent content, consistent content, all of that kind of stuff. The second side of it is like after you really start to get that moving, this is where I encourage people to start to work on their Google reputation. So it's like when someone Googles you today, what comes up? If someone Googles your company, what comes up, right? Like that's the idea. And if you can make it so that when people Google you, not only do you have like bias media that comes up. And what's bias media? Bias media is media that you create about you. So this is your website, this is your socials, this is all of that kind of stuff, right? But unbiased media, which is what other people are saying about you. So this is you getting featured in Forbes or an Entrepreneur or in, whatever magazine that's there. Then what starts to happen is you start to build up additional credibility. And like now when I go out there and I'm networking with people, I really don't like talking about myself that much. Like I don't do that to build credibility. If someone doesn't know who I am and like, they're asking me about me, I'm like, oh, I've been in whatever, like I don't want to talk about a bunch of me. You can just Google me later and you can, learn all about me, but I want to learn about you. And just being able to drop a little simple thing like Google me, right? Like that brings up your credibility significantly. And so it's just a tool of leverage that you can be able to go out there and use. And this works for anything. Like if you're trying to get more coaching clients, if you're trying to get more speaking gigs, if you're trying to sell more of your whatever it is, like people are going to look you up online. And if all else being equal, right, if they're choosing between you and a competitor and all else is equal, then and you have a great or a Google reputation, the person has nothing. It's like they're gonna go with you. And so, and frankly, the more digital the world goes, the more important that online reputation becomes. And now it's evolving actually, because if you go out there, like anybody listening to this can do it. Ask, who is Luke Hessler to Chat GPT? And it's going to go and tell you who it is. And guess what sources it's going to cite? Freaking articles that I've gotten online. That's how it gets all this information. Okay. And so like that is the concept, is being able to position yourself, not just on Google. Now AI is like the next thing, but this also parlays into that as well, which I think is going to get, much more important over the next few years.
Talk to me about Ace. Talk to me about the third agency, the agency you're running and crushing it right now with.
Yeah, man. ACE is amazing, dude. I've been loving this one. It's so ACE it stands for something. So it's ACE, accountability, collaboration, excellence. So that's what ACE stands for. That's our core values, and that's like who we are at our core. Our mission is to serve those who serve others. The last thing I wanted to be as a PR firm is a propaganda arm. You see that a lot nowadays. And so what my goal is like I really do want to make an impact in the world. It's that Zig Ziglar quote we said when we started, you can get anything you want. You've helped enough other people get what they want. And what I want to go do is I want to go find other impact-driven entrepreneurs and businesses and thought leaders, and I want to be able to amplify their voice using digital PR. And so that's what we do. That's what we focus on. The three primary verticals that we focus on now are press. We've talked a little bit about that. Podcast tours, where basically we will help people become guests on top 10% podcasts in their niche, and then also TV appearances as well. Primarily regional TV appearances, but we have a couple national ones there too. How we do it is we build out 12-month PR plans for clients, because just like getting in shape isn't going to the gym one time, like building a brand online is not getting in one article, getting on one podcast. That's just not how it works. Some people will try and sell you that just so they can get money, but just it's not how it's going to work. You really do need to have a consistent plan to go and build that out. And so we have a very specific like clientele that we work with. We're looking for thought leaders, entrepreneurs, and businesses that are doing 7 figures or more. We have a database of TV shows, podcasts, and press publications that have already pre-approved those stories. And so that's how we can do what we do, where we guarantee to get people published because we only work with this one niche versus taking on, a doctor here and a lawyer here and this person there, right? It's like a totally different pitch every single time that you do it. But if we just dial in on this one specific niche, it allows us to get really predictable results for someone. And so that's been an amazing experience for us. And, that's what I continue to, focus on scaling over the next few years.
Love it, man. Let's talk about some of these clients. I mean, you said Dr. Seuss. I'm like, Dr. Seuss, is he still alive?
I don't know. I don't think Dr. Seuss is still alive, but his brand lives on. That's for sure. In infamy.
So I mean, you got Andrew Tate, you got some characters in here that I would love to, if you have some stories that you could share, whatever you are allowed to share, or even how you even got connected with these high profile people.
Yeah. So, not every, I would say. Now we're starting to get some pretty high profile people through our cold outreach. So that's how we do our lead generation, is through cold outreach on LinkedIn. Some things don't change. That's how we roll that. And we've gotten some pretty cool people through that. Like we just started working with an ex-fund manager of State Street, that's there. We started working with a bunch of really cool people. So anyways, how do we find that? Most people that I shared with you though is all through referrals. So those 3 people, Tate, Calvin Johnson, who's a Hall of Fame football player from the Lions. I'm from Michigan. So that's a guy for me. And then Dr. Seuss, all of those actually came from referrals. And this is a really big thing in business, is that if you do good business, like you will get referrals, period, end of story, because most people don't do good business. That's just the reality. And so it makes it really easy for people who do to do really well. And so, for Tate, for example, he was looking for a particular service, and, we have NDAs for different various things. And so I can't talk about like all the details of everything that's there, but he was looking for a particular service, and, he was referred to us by somebody else because he'd been burned like a bajillion times, and we were able to go and deliver that service for him. And it was very simple, very easy, and we were able to go and win for that. When it comes to Calvin Johnson, a buddy of mine is in the insurance business. Calvin Johnson was launching locker room insurance, and they were looking for a PR team to be able to go and launch that with him. And so he gave me a call, asked if I wanted the project. I drove down to, Detroit, was able to, spend a day with Calvin and film with them and do all these different types of things. And we started working with him. Same thing when it came with Dr. Seuss. We just had it was actually a referral partner from another agency. So another thing we do is we'll collaborate with other agencies that have, are serving our same clients, but in a different way. Maybe they do ads or social media management or something like that, right? But their clients want PR. And so we'll create a strategic relationship with them where we'll go and serve them in that way. And so that's how this one worked. They had Dr. Seuss as one of their clients. They were looking for a particular service they didn't have access to. They came to us. We were able to go out there and help them with those things. And so I think that's a big thing in business is just, like working your way up the ladder, doing good business. And again, your reputation takes a lifetime to build, or it takes a lifetime to build and a second to lose, right? I think a lot of people have heard this, but like, I really believe this so much, because I've seen so many people that just, that did something stupid, got greedy and did whatever. And it's like in a moment, they lose out on that opportunity. But if you treat people well, you do the right thing, you deliver on your promises. My philosophy is always under promise and over deliver, right? If I think something's going to take a week, I'll tell them two, right? If I think I'm going to get them, something big, I'm going to tell them it's small. So then they're always excited about it, right? But people get, desperate for the sale and they overpromise and underdeliver. And that's a stupid thing to go and do. And so I think that the reason we're able to attract these clients is just based off of doing business for a long enough period of time. The cream rises to the top essentially, and, they come in.
I think you mentioned you don't do retainers. Is it a la carte? How do you position your guys' offering compared to other PR agencies?
Yep, absolutely. So the way that we position it is that we build out a full 12-month PR plan before we ever actually start working with the clients, including all of the publications that they're going to get into, the TV shows they're going to do, everything. And they know when they're going to get in, they know how much they're going to cost, they know literally everything that's going to happen before we get started. Then what the client can do is they can evaluate the plan and they say, okay, this plan is going to cost me X and I'm going to get Y. Is that worth it to me? Yes or no? And then they can make a simple decision, and we back everything we do with an 100% money back guarantee. So let's just say, for example, we say we're going to get somebody in Forbes, and for whatever reason, Forbes denies the story and it can't go and get in there. Then we're going to go to the person and we'll say, hey, you can get your money back, or you can go and do a swap where you can swap the Forbes article for a Time Magazine article or whatever the heck else you want to go out there and do. What would you prefer? And if they say they want the money back, we're going to give them the money back because that's how you do good business. And so that is how we build these out. We do have, like most PR firms do, a retainer. And what that basically means is that it's like they're paying monthly, but you don't know what you're going to get. They're just pitching, right? And it's like maybe it'll get picked up, maybe it won't. But for us, we have those very clear deliverables. We do have monthly payments, right? Like people will pay 1,000, 2,500, 5K, 10K a month to us, but they know the exact deliverables they're going to get in exchange for that money versus the ambiguity that occurs with other PR firms.
Makes sense. Let's have some fun real quick.
Yeah.
Ballpark, what is like a placement in the Times Magazine cost?
About 10K.
10K.
Yeah.
What are some other ones that people like, some big publications that you'd be like, dang, I didn't know it cost that much, or maybe surprise some people?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to get in TechCrunch, it's 100K. So that's a big one.
Well, that's for like people looking for investors, right? So that's for raising for startups, I'm guessing.
Yeah, a lot of tech companies, or just like already established tech companies that are looking to go and just get good stuff out there. Like, because the reality is it's like a dollar amount is very relative. It's like $10,000 to a company that's doing $10 million is not a lot of money. $10,000 to a company that's doing $100,000 is a crap ton of money. And so all of it is relative to the companies and the clients that you're going out there and serving. But the way that we break it down is like we have like 4 different tiers of articles, and generally they fall into these 4. So like tier 1s are like usually 10K. This would be like a NASDAQ, Forbes, USA Today, that type of stuff. Tier 2s are 5K. This would be more of like a Tech Times, LA Weekly, Los Angeles Magazine, things like that. Tier 3s would be 2K. Those is like a digital journal or a Good Men Project, or like smaller kind of like specific ones, like industry specific publications. And then like tier 4s are like your really small ones. These are, like a New York Weekly or a, Daily Scanner or something along those lines. publications, and those are $500. And so usually all of our publications will fall into those 4 tiers. There are a few of them that are the outliners, like a tech time, or like the one I just mentioned that's $100,000, right? Like that's something that is outside of it, so it has its own pricing point. But basically, how we do it is when someone becomes a client of ours, they get a login to our software, and then in the software they'll see a full catalog of all of the publications that we have access to, all the pricing, all the everything, and they can filter through it based off of genre, price, or whatever other things that they're going and looking for, and it'll show them the publications that we have there.
That's awesome. And what
Yeah.
about the publications? Do they do their own like vetting process?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it depends on what publication you're getting in. That's going to determine basically how much vetting there is, right? So if you get into like the tier 4 articles, we can get almost anybody into a tier 4 article, frankly. But like, not anybody can go and get into TechCrunch. Like, that's the reality. You're gonna have to. There's gonna be a pitch. We're gonna have to go and do that. And so for the bigger publications, usually what we do is we have like a pre-pitch. So like, say for example, you're like, yo, I want to get into Forbes. Then what I would do is I'd say, okay, cool, and I would essentially go to Forbes and I would do the quick pitch, and if it gets accepted, I'd be like, all right, cool, let's run it. And if not, then I would just let and so we invest the time to go and do that ahead of time before we offer those bigger publications.
Got it. Man, I can go on, but as we wrap up, man, I want to ask you, Luke, Ace, what's like the next 12 months and then what's the ultimate goal of Ace?
Yeah, great question, man. So my goal in the next 12 months is I want to scale our company. We did about probably 1.2 ish, this year, and I got to scale this to 3 in the next year, and then we want to get it to 5 and then 10. That's kind of what we're seeing from a standpoint, from a revenue mark. Then what I also want to go out there and do with it is I want to begin to help other people be able to build their own digital PR firms. I want to be able to teach them the model that we've created, give them access to our database of publications, share with them, how we fulfill, what we do, all of that kind of stuff, because it's a really cool opportunity and you can make a good amount of money doing it. And there's not a lot of people that have really kind of like figured out the model in the way that we've gone and figured it out. And I would love to be able to kind of pass that along because frankly, like one of my big passions is I love teaching. I love getting on podcasts like this. I love talking. I love sharing about my experiences and things like this. It's something I'm really passionate about. And so I don't get to do that as much in my current business. I'm working on building a company, right? And so I do want to get more into that again, potentially putting out a podcast. We'll see. I'm kind of considering that at this point, but it's not a 100% thing. But that's my passion, man. Like I want to go back to, my 19-year-old self, and I want to give myself the advice that I know now and just help myself navigate through that. And I think a lot of other people would benefit from that too.
I would 100% agree, man. Obviously, you have a passion for it, but you are an incredible speaker and just well formulated your thoughts, and you get points across like very few people I know. So I'm all for it. You let me know when the podcast drops because I want to be there to support. And I guess the last question I want to ask you before we ask, the details how to get in touch with you. Who is the ideal prospect that you're looking for that someone in this podcast can potentially reach out to you and be like, man, that's me. I do need your help. Because like I mentioned, I think the first 30 minutes of this podcast was for those people. They're just starting out. But then half of our audience are 7 to 9 figure entrepreneurs. They're the people that come to our immersion mastermind, like Cody, like this incredible people that are looking to scale their business, and they want probably this PR. But what's like call out the specific problems that these people are having, and maybe what you can obviously do to solve that we just talked about.
Yeah, it's a good question, and I'll be super clear on this. So, number one, 7 figures or more in revenue. That's the number one thing. It's going to make it so that we can actually get your story accepted by all these big publications, and you're going to be able to afford it, and it's going to make sense to you. Number one. Number two is Google yourself right now. Is your online reputation in alignment with your offline reputation? And what I mean by that is that when I have a conversation with you offline about your expertise and credibility, I get a certain impression of who you are. If I just Googled you and didn't have any conversation with you at all, would I get that same impression? And if the answer to that is no, let's change that because it is a massive asset, a massive thing that's going to be able to help you. It increases lead conversion, retention, a bunch of other things that we can dive into detail at a different time. That would be the person that we're looking for.
Luke, what's the best way people can reach out to you?
Yeah, easiest way to do it, just go to acebranding.com. You can book a discovery call there to connect with our team. Like I said before this, we'll build out an entire 12-month PR plan for you to be able to go and look at. No obligation at all. And you can evaluate whether or not you think we're going to be the right people or not.
That's huge, man. Luke, we're gonna collab quite a bit, man, because I'm really excited about getting connected through Cody. At the end of the day, it's really referrals and and people in our inner circle that invite other people into our world, into Growth House. And I really appreciate that connection, Luke.
Yeah, hey, I appreciate it as well. Shout out to Cody, dude. Jesse, I love what you guys are doing out there. It's important, it's valuable. You're a great interviewer, man, and I see what you've had some success. So yeah, I'm excited to collab moving forward, brother.
Jesse Ray, Luke Hessler, Growth House Podcast. We're out.